Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Jason's Take On podcast. I am Jason Whitehead, based in Washington, D.C., here with my partner in crime, Mr. Noble. Say hello, Jason.
Hello, Jason. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody.
Well done. And we're excited today to have a very special guest with us, Rupesh Rao, who is the CEO and founder of SaaS. And SaaS helps enterprise SaaS companies deliver customer-centric onboarding and implementation at scale. And Rupesh has over 20 years experience in a wide range of roles, including software engineer, account manager, a couple roles as chief customer officer, and now as CEO. So today, Rupesh is going to share his experience and insights on how to best help companies manage complexity during the onboarding and implementation process. And Rupesh, thank you so much for joining us today. If you could, just to get us started, please go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you came to be an expert on complexity and onboarding.
Great. First of all, thank you, Jason and Jason, for having me here. I'm very honored to be here and very excited. We've been talking for a while, so it's great to finally be having a conversation with you both. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
So quickly about me, obviously I started SaaS 3 years back, early 2020. And before that, spent about 2 decades in the industry in various roles. Had the chance to see the full customer journey life cycle, so to speak, from all the way to acquiring the customer, delivering value and account management, customer success, and so forth. And so it's been a great journey for me so far, all in all. And that's quick about myself.
Great. Thank you so much. And it was such a pleasure. We got to meet in person the other day when we were the three of us were at the Pulse Europe conference. And it was nice to, after all these years, put a face to a name and really just connect. It was great to see you there. So let's jump in. There are a wide range of application types out there. And obviously, a lot of us are very familiar where you can sign up on the fly in the freemium models and jump in and just get started instantly. But that's not really what you do and where you focus. You're more the other extreme, if I understand correctly, where it's either a complex product or a complex organization. It may take weeks or months to actually get folks up and running and implement it. Yeah. What do you see as the biggest challenges when you do have a complex implementation that need to be managed? And sort of how is it different than more of the sign up and go?
Yeah, great question, Jason. And this is the challenge I think we are seeing a lot of companies face. This is a challenge I faced myself before I started SaaS, and that was actually the motivation why SaaS came into being, right? So the fundamental challenge, Jason, is this whole notion of customers buy from you to achieve certain outcomes, customer business outcomes, and then how does that translate to your product and your implementation process, onboarding, and the way you get them live. And we all have been there, seen that, hey, the moment you go live, the next day you have a bunch of escalations and tickets and expectation mismatch and all that reactive firefighting starts. So I think that's fundamentally the problem that we are seeing, and fundamentally the problem we are trying to solve for our customers is that how do you go back to the basics of truly customer success by tracking the customer outcomes right from the sales and pre-sale side all the way to implementation, and then go beyond go live as well, right? So that's the fundamental, I would say, the complexity and the challenge. It sounds very simple, but it's really still a lot of companies are struggling with, because this is a phase where a lot of teams are involved, number one, right? So you've got the sales team closing the deal and handing it over to the implementation team. Then you have the product team involved, you have the solution team, you have engineering team, QA team, and so on, right? So a lot of players. And then you also have the trying to collaborate with them as well. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of teams, and a lot of silos, right? You have the CRM system where the sales opportunity was tracked, and you have the implementation side. People are tracking it in Jira's of the world, or Microsoft Project, or Asana, or Excel trackers. Then you have the ticketing system. Then you have the product roadmap tools. So many silos, and it's getting worse with the whole more SaaS tools coming into picture. I think that's the fundamental complexity we are seeing across a lot of our customers and the industry. That how do we alignment, right? Internal alignment between different cross-functional teams, that, hey, this is what North metric, and then how do we drive that alignment using technology? Because our technology sometimes becomes a roadblock. We have so many silos of tools. So that's fundamentally the complexity we are seeing in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's out there. I spent many years of my career doing CRM, enterprise-wide CRM implementations, and most of them were multi-year efforts. And I remember one client, I was there for a few years, and they were doing a 10-year program that was everything from redefining all their stuff, moving their systems in, consolidating 72 call centers. And the amount of effort it took to just manage that internal complexity and to get all the different teams that were hundreds of people over a 10-year period, the struggle is real. It can be a real challenge in there. And I think most folks who have never experienced something like that really can't even fathom just how many moving parts there are and the amount of structure you need to keep it all together.
It's
Absolutely.
an area that I don't think people are investing the right amounts in. This is why you guys are doing what you're doing there, Rupesh. But it's something that organizations struggle with. They don't understand what investment they need to make in this and how they do this. One way that we always like to work, and Jason and I have spoken about this, is you take a step into your customer's shoes and then work backwards to your own shoes there. What are some of the things that you're seeing most customers doing that go wrong, that mean that they need help when they're managing these complex implementations, onboarding, these complex change programs, transformation programs internally? What are the common things that you're seeing them doing wrong, and what makes them reach out for external help?
Yeah. So fundamentally, the problem statement is still the same, Jason, that we had 20 years back, that companies struggle to take their customers to value, time to value, successfully at scale, right? So that's the fundamental challenge. And there's a lot of things going underneath the surface, that how do you track what was promised in the sales cycle, what outcomes, and then how do you translate that to your internal different cross-functional teams, right from your SOW document to a bunch of tickets in Jira that your product team needs to close. How do you keep the connection between all these parts, your kickoff meeting, your implementation process, your Jira tickets, your document, and these are all things disconnected in a lot of companies, right? And that is where a lot of companies and our customers struggle, where essentially things fall through the cracks, so to speak, right? Either product team missed the context of a customer requirement or an outcome, and they build the feature, they go live with the feature, and straight away there is some defects or expectation mismatch. Prioritization is a big problem we are seeing, where a lot of companies are not getting the prioritization right, because you may have 20 customers who are asking for certain things from your product, and obviously every customer has got their own timeline when they want to go live.
Yep.
How do you keep track of all these timelines at scale in a meaningful manner? So your product team might decide to release a feature next month, but that might be good news for some customers. It might be bad news for some other customers who wanted this earlier. So how do you keep this, what we call this whole customer-centric prioritization is a very common and legacy problem companies are struggling with. So those are a few examples I would say we see very often.
Are you seeing organizations change? Are they getting better at this? Or is it a problem that's growing and getting worse with the level of complexity, the number of implementations? Is this a problem that you see growing and growing?
So interestingly, I think people have now started to realize that this is an important problem, because if you look at customer success as a sort of board level metrics, everybody now clearly knows what they need to track. So they know clearly that they need to track three things primarily in customer success. First is your NPS, right? And second is your retention. And third might be your upsell, cross-sell, expansion. Now, that's very clear to a lot of companies, and they are now put the tools and process in place for these three metrics. Now, the challenge is these three metrics are actually lagging indicators of customer success. Because if the customer has, let's say, gone live, and for whatever reason, the adoption is not happening, which happens to all of us, right? Adoption is a big challenge. Now, if you are a CSM, the next question you will ask is that, hey, why is the adoption not happening? And that is the point where the post-mortem kind of opens up, and then you start to go figure out, okay, what did we do wrong? Is it on the customer side? Is it on our side? Did we miss any ball, or did we drop any outcome they wanted? What went wrong? And then you have to travel backwards into the customer journey all the way to the sales and pre-sales stage. Okay, what was it that we jointly agreed on, the success plan or the outcomes, and then did we deliver all those outcomes or not? So that tracking becomes very critical. So this is a realization we are seeing now a lot of companies are going through, and it's a kind of early stages where they recognize that unless they nail the leading indicators, these lagging indicators will be always out of their control. So now companies are starting to put investments and metrics and process and everything around it to make sure right from the sales and pre-sales, the handover and the implementation is taken care in a structured way, so that when you have go live, then NPS, adoption, and retention, these are all taken care. You have set the stage successfully for these three metrics to happen. So that's the change we're starting to see in the industry.
We're seeing a lot of that as well too, because my business partner Sue Nabbit-Moore, she developed what we call AM and PM metrics, and the AM are the activity metrics or adoption metrics. The PM are those performance metrics, the lagging indicators. And we're doing a lot more with customers up front, saying, we know there's a period between now and go live, and between go live and when you see those outcomes, here's how we track the activity and know we're on the right path and the right trajectory to success. And here's what that should look like along the way. And that's been very powerful for a lot of folks. Keep the faith until you see those lagging indicators that you want, that we're doing the right things and moving forward.
Absolutely.
But one of the things I'm curious about, making the distinction between onboarding and implementation when you have these long-term multi-year projects, how do you see most clients deciding that onboarding is over even before the implementation is live? Do that? I guess I'm wondering, with that complexity, what constitutes the end of onboarding when there's still a lot of things going on to get live with the system?
The way we look at this one, Jason, is implementation is really a subset of onboarding. It's part of your broader onboarding, right? You're trying to onboard the customer and all their users onto your platform. And the implementation is a step in that journey, right? So you close the deal with the customer, you go through the implementation, then you have the go live, then you onboard the users, you train them, and then you make sure they realize the value. So there are three parts of the value proposition, so to speak. So in the sales cycle, you are promising the value. In the implementation cycle, you are delivering the value, and then post go live, you have the value realization. So the value promise, the value delivery, and the value realization post go live that's what essentially becomes your onboarding, so to speak, the full circle of onboarding.
Okay, great. We've talked about a lot of things here with complexity in different areas. What is it that you think vendors need to start doing differently to help their customers? Where do you think vendors are still getting it wrong?
Yeah, so I think what I mentioned earlier, fundamentally, it's the internal alignment we see is the biggest problem. The alignment or the disconnect between, the classic disconnect between what we call sales, customer success, and product. They typically have different priorities. Sales has got their own priority, customer success has got their own priority, and product has got their own priority with their own roadmap and stuff. I think this alignment and bringing all these teams together on what really is the key metric we are trying to achieve for the customer is still a challenge. I think a lot of companies go wrong. Simple things like, for example, retention, right? Now, retention in many companies is a metric or KPI for customer success teams.
Right.
Now, I'm going to make a statement here, which might be this thing that product teams also should be measured on retention, because to a large extent, we all know that retention or churn can happen because the customer did not get value from the product. And so today, a lot of companies obviously are not organized like that. They are not incentivizing those teams like that, right? So that creates a disconnect between your objectives and your incentivization. So unless you incentivize different teams in a harmonic way, your objectives will be always a challenge. So I think that's the fundamental way I think companies are still figuring it out. What's the best way?
Where do you see vendors struggling most with building out their own processes around onboarding, implementation? And then secondly, why do you think it is so difficult for these organizations?
Yeah, so the reason why it is so difficult is, if you really think about the simplistic three things that companies want to track during onboarding and implementation is, who is the customer? What have we promised to them? What are the outcomes we want to achieve with them? And then how are we going to deliver those outcomes? So this who, what, and how is what they're trying to figure it out, right? Now, if you see the way they operate today is, who is the customer is all tracked in your CRM system, opportunity, customer context, and all of that. Then what are the business outcomes we are trying to deliver for this customer is again tracked in various tools. Some companies track it in CRM, some companies track it on a piece of paper, SOW document or a BRD document, which is an unstructured piece of data, right? Anything in PPT, PDF is unstructured data. Now, the how bit, now how are you going to deliver these outcomes is again tracked in different set of tools, right? So the how bit will typically have two tracks to it. One is your product track. You have dependencies on the product. The customer might have asked you for a new feature request or enhancement or an API integration or configuration, all those tech stuff. So for that, typically companies will go create a bunch of Jira tickets, right? So typically the document will get hashed out into a sort of a document where they do their solutioning of, for each outcome, what product outcomes or product dependencies we need from our product team, which will go into a bunch of Jira tickets. And then there is an implementation task that the implementation team needs to do, right from the handover to kickoff meeting, then BRD, then UAT, and then all those steps. Now, all these tools, as we all know, don't talk to each other very well. Your project management tool, which tracks your implementation task, is not very much aware of what's going on in the Jira tickets. If your product team has released or not released a feature, is unknown to your project management tool. It has to travel back via a human loop. That product team will say, hey, we have done this or we have not done this. It will come to the CSM or implementation team then needs to figure it out. Okay, so what does it mean for that customer who asked for that feature? So they have to connect all these dots manually, juggling around these different tools, right?
Yep.
So it's a combination of silos of tools, to answer your question, Jason, and the mix of unstructured data and structured data. So you have some documented information in some documents and Jira tickets, and then tasks in a project management tool. So that is what makes it very complex.
I'm working with a client now and has the exact situation that you've just described, where the teams, different incentives, multiple tools, things not coming back and forth. And it's a huge challenge for them. And I think you're right that, the tools, they may not talk to each other as well as they do, but the amount of time it takes to organize your internal organization as a vendor to get everything humming nicely and get the handovers done in the process and the incentives, I think it's massive. And many organizations, I think, still struggle with that quite a bit. It's really interesting.
Very true. Yeah.
I think if you're a customer as well, I mean, you're potentially going through more than one of these at the same time.
Yes.
Or going through an implementation, and maybe you've just gone live with another one. So there's lots going on at the same time. And that kind of perspective, how do they all work together? What's the integration like? But then how do they all compare to each other? Is implementation, onboarding working for one? Is it not working? It puts you as a customer in a very difficult position. You've going through all this big change and all of these different systems at different stages and different levels of maturity, I think.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm wondering, because you work with a lot of SaaS teams and CSMs and all those things, how do you actually see your customers, like the SaaS vendors, organizing their internal teams to help manage this complexity? So for example, do you see or do you recommend that they have dedicated onboarding teams, or do you typically see being more like CSM generalists that do the full life cycle of a customer? And do you have any recommendations on how to make those decisions of how to organize?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have seen the full spectrum. Typically, it's in the early stages, the CS team does everything. They will be involved right from the pre-sale stage, in the scoping discussions, in the solutioning discussions. They will do the implementation, they will do the post-go live support, and so they will do the whole life cycle, right? But as the companies scale to more number of customers, there is the next round of funding, Series A, B, C, and so on. So they start to segregate different teams, and that is really the best practice I've seen, where you'll have a dedicated onboarding team, and then you will have a customer success team, which typically will come into the picture after the customer has gone live. And then you might also have what they call account management team, whose job is really to work closely with the customer success team to drive the upsell cross-sell. So a lot of companies don't want the CS teams to be sales targets incentivized team. They want them to really focus on the value for customers. So they separate out the account management team from the customer success team. So then on the other extreme, you then have these kind of three teams: the onboarding team, customer success team, and an account management team, who take care of different KPIs. So account management team will take care of your upsell cross-sell, customer success team will take care of your adoption and NPS metrics, and onboarding team will take care of your time to value, like KPI. So that's how the KPIs get managed.
Rupesh, what are the typical kind of organizations that are looking for help with this? Are they across all industries, all levels of maturity, or are you guys seeing a pattern in terms of the types of organization that say, we are looking for help in managing our onboarding processes?
Yeah, I think so far, obviously, we are focusing or talking to a lot of companies in B2B software world. So they're definitely any company who is targeting mid-market to enterprise customers. It is not a plug and play solution, requires a lot of handholding of the customers, specific requirements that requires a lot of API integration work or configuration, or they may ask for module specific work or roadmap items to be prioritized as a new feature. So those are the kind of companies who are scaling very rapidly. They might have already had 50 plus enterprise customers. They might have raised a Series A round and Series B round, and they are looking to double, triple their customer base in the next 6 to 9 months. And that is where they feel this pain quite badly. And that's where they realize they need help. Yeah. Because Excel sheets start to fall apart at some stage, and anywhere you have any human intervention leads to things falling through the cracks. And in a lot of cases, we see customers having customer churn. And I've seen this myself in my earlier experiences, where Customer has churned right during onboarding itself, even before the go live, because it took too long. They did not get the value during onboarding and all that. So super critical for a lot of companies, and that's where they are now starting to put their focus.
One of the things you said earlier that really made me think as well too is making the distinction between onboarding the new customer, the new organization versus onboarding the end users. And I think there's a lot of that where I've seen a lot of organizations get into trouble is they really view the initial go live as a focus of end all and be all, but then they don't really think through how they're going to onboard new employees that may come in 6 months or a year or 2 years down the road, or they don't really think through how are we going to onboard existing customers to new modules or new key functionality that's just been developed or released and those sort of things. What are your experiences or recommendations around ongoing onboarding, whether it's new employees or new modules that are coming out to existing users? And how can things be improved there? Are there any unique challenges around that as opposed to the initial implementation?
Yeah, very interesting question. That's actually a very different kind of challenge we see a lot of companies struggle with, where this information of your case studies, right? You might have 100 customers who you have implemented in the last 5 years at different points of time. And those details of what modules, what use cases, what outcomes we have implemented for which customer, this data, you can imagine, is all over the place. It's in some bits and bobs in CRM or Jira or some documents and PDF documents and all over the place. So there is no one single intelligent repository which can tell the teams that, hey, this customer, we have done these 3 things in the last 3 years, and these 7 things are our logical upsell cross opportunities from a product or a module or more outcomes that we can see other customers have already taken, right, from the same industry. And customers love to know, what are you doing with my peers, right? Am I missing out on something? So those kind of information exchange becomes extremely challenging, which I tried again in my earlier career manually, and it doesn't work, right? So one of the use cases we help with our customers is having that single sort of digitized repository of all the implementations, and then how can you make cross-connect the dots and make sense of all this data to deliver more value for your customers and then expand as part of that as well.
I love that idea because it gives you that consistency as well. How do you do good and repeat what good looks like?
True. Absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely. Great. Rupesh, thank you so much. And before we go, we always like to throw out a bold challenge question to all of our guests. So your question is, what is the single most impactful action a SaaS vendor can take to ensure fast, effective onboarding and implementation of a complex product? So if there's one thing that they could really do, what's the most impactful thing you'd like to see SaaS vendors do consistently?
So I think the one most important thing is, as I mentioned earlier, touched up earlier, is this whole internal cross-functional alignment, aligning different teams, your sales, customer success, onboarding, product, engineering, because a lot of times these teams, especially the product and tech teams, don't really have the context of why, right? Why are we building this feature? What outcome is it going to deliver for our customers? What is the revenue impact for us? Why should we prioritize it? All this data is just kind of flowing in emails and Excels and different silos of tools. So I think if that's one thing they can sort out, the internal cross-functional alignment, I think that will take care of a lot of problems.
It's not a small task there, not a small object.
I know. It's extremely challenging. And,
yeah, absolutely.
It is indeed. Again, before we go, thank you so much. We've loved having you share your insights. We want to invite you to do a shameless plug for anything Cognitive SaaS. So how can people find you and anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you, Jason, again for the opportunity. So yeah, Cognitive SaaS is a customer onboarding tool for enterprise mid-market SaaS focused companies. You can reach out to us. Our website is cognitive.com. I'll leave my LinkedIn profile link in the notes here. So yeah, happy to chat with companies who are looking at customer onboarding is a strategic objective and priority and looking to streamline and faster time to value. So happy to have a chat and see if we can add value.
Great. Awesome.
Superb conversation, Rupesh. I think this is not every organization is looking for this. So this is just huge. This is really good. And as we said at the beginning, so good to actually meet in person before we did the recording. So really good to see you last week. A huge thank you from us.
Great.
Likewise, super honored to be here, Jason, and thanks for having me. And yeah, look forward to future releases and look forward to speaking soon again.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rupesh.